with ADC, Agricultural Development Corporation, and this is an info briefing regarding ADC. We have Jimmy Nakatani giving the presentation on behalf of ADC. I just want to make a note that we have a hard deadline of 11 o'clock because some of our members will have to go to finance right after this. So the structure will be basically half an hour or so of ADC doing their presentation, and then we'll have questions after that. Um, with that said, we'll jump right in, and I will turn it over um, to the director of ADC, James Nakatani. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, Mark Asham, and Vice Chair Puso. Today I have with me, I have also my staff. I have Mark Kaichi and Ken Nakamoto. And if they'll be doing some, if I can't answer some questions, they'll be here to assist me. Thank you, Ken. Okay, we can start. Okay, first of all, Chair and Vice Chair committee members, ADC's mission is to acquire and manage in partnership, and I want to emphasize partnership with farmers, ranchers, and aquaculture groups, selected arable land, water system infrastructure for commercial, and I want to emphasize commercial agricultural uses to direct research in areas that will lead to development of new crops, markets, and lower production costs. Next slide. Here you have the staff. We did a matrix of our staff. And what I want to point out is that we have a staff of 4 people right now. And so, and really, we are part of the department. We're an attached agency of the department, not the department itself. And to the right, maybe let me explain that. The Waiahole water system is a separate entity. It's under us, but it's a management company for our Waiahole water system. And so, and I want to emphasize that we've been criticized before that it's 25 years or 27 years. And I just want to point out that this staff we have now, actually myself started in 2013. Here you have some areas that we manage, and you see Central Oahu, and then you see Nuku'ia, and also we have in the red is Kalepa, and the orange Kekaha. And there's one more spot on the Big Island that we have, just a small parcel, and that's in Kauai. Total ADC acreage statewide is about 22,000 acres. Tilable acres, can't see that, is about 15,000. Current acreage occupied is about 9,600%, occupied at 64%. And here you have a picture of, this is one of our tenants, Shinho, and that's in Galbraith. And this is the percentage of ADC's land holdings. As you can see, Kekaha has the most of our lands. It's Kalepa, and then you see Central Oahu, and Tilable, and this is a pretty important map. I want to emphasize that. Can you scroll this here? This is in the blue. Mostly this blue here is where the current Galbraith operations are, and that triangle portion is where our small farmers are, and that was mandated by the city to put small farmers on the land. And as you can see, the total acreage is 3,800. The tillable acreage is 3,200. And currently, we have about 1,500 acres occupied, and this is 48%. Check it back to the slides. And I want to emphasize that when we talk about Malka that we recently purchased, is this green portion here and basically here, some of this. So that's the lands that we are planning to develop in the future. Okay, next slide. And Galbraith Crops, as you can see, it's cabbage, bell peppers, tomatoes, cucumbers, taro, plain okra, there's some citrus going on, avocado, dragon fruit, watermelons, and green onions, tea leaves. And there might be more, depending on, this is taro. This is a taro that the ethnic groups would do this, is the Vietnamese and Malaysian taro, stems, leaves, and you see tomatoes and you see eggplants in the Galbraith Crops. This is locally here. This thing should be closer to Dillingham Airfield. Total acreage is 148 acres. Tilable acreage is 18, and one person's occupied that. And, that's actually the quarry that has a lot of water in it. And that's
Hey, Jimmy, sorry for interrupting. Can you move a little bit closer to the mic? Your voice is a little soft.
Okay. Okay. Next slide. And this is Kekaha. Total acreage is about 12,500. Tillable acreage is 7,500 approximately. Current acreage occupied is about 4,000 acres. Occupancy is 53%. And basically what we look at is the Mana Plains down here. Okay, next slide. And this is some of the crops in Kekaha. This is a diversified crop. These are on the left is a fire orchard, and this is the harvest of a mango operation. Kalepa, total acreage approximately 5,900. Tillable acreage about 43. Current occupied is about 4,000. Percentage occupied is 94%. Kalepa is, if for the members, is an area right out of Lehui, and Kalepa crops, and here you see sweet potatoes, and this is one of the crops that's kind of surprising because it's in high demand. I mean, for the local market, you can supply that, but there's a high demand on the mainland market, and so this is something that we should keep an eye on. Next slide. This is a non-food crop, and this is a Christmas tree, Helemano Farms. And this is in the area of Russo's district. Provides seasonal jobs, and really was pretty outstanding that he sold like 5,000 trees. And talk about an import replacement. This is something that we should maybe expand. We have always the criticism of Christmas trees bringing alien species and stuff like that to Hawaii, but this is really a really nice operation. Next slide. This is the Waiahole water system. Currently provides about approximately 5,900 acres in Central Plains for agriculture use. The system is approximately 27 miles long. It comes from the east side of Hawaii all the way across to the west side. System is critical importance not only because of the impact of produce, but because it's economic impact to the community. Next slide. This slide, this is a CIP Land Acquisition, and this has been somewhat, I guess, debatable in some papers that are written. Funds received was 114 million approximately. Funds expended was 81 million. Acres acquired was gross about 3,700. Usable is 2,100, and the cost per acre is about average about 22,000 acres, $22,000 per acre. I want to point out that the difference between the appropriated funds and the funds expended is mainly because one was the asking price and two was the appraised price, and we only bought land that we could justify by appraisal. Okay, this is a spreadsheet of the acquisition. Progress made during the past year. We acknowledge that there's been challenges, particularly with our Wahiawa properties. That includes clearing of illegal activities and filling the land and providing necessary irrigation improvements. Now we've taken major steps in the past year. We can move forward with a goal of 100%. I just want to say that everybody thinks that and Ken will talk about the illegal activity soon, but preparing pineapple land is much harder than preparing sugar lands. And the reason for that is one that pineapple lands usually didn't come with very good irrigation, and two is that you take a lot to deacidify the land. In other words, the soil is pretty acidic, and then you need to put a lot into making it more of a neutral type of soil. Thank you. Next slide. I'm going to turn it over to Ken, and he'll talk about cleaning up at ADC and the Wahiawa site. Chair, if I could ask Ken to come aboard. Chair. It's not listening.
Good morning, Chair Asham, Vice Chair Peruso, and members of the committee. My name is Ken Nakamoto. I'm with the ADC. This specific area, specifically the ADC lands surrounding Whitmore Village and Moa Camp, have been the most difficult to develop by far. Not only were we facing the normal agricultural related challenges, the criminal activity in the area was just out of control. It wasn't because of a lack of effort. We were literally outgunned. We installed gates, we installed vehicle barriers, we constructed berms, we put concrete pylons and large boulders, only to return the next day to find that it's been moved and in some cases destroyed. I'm not sure if the committee is aware of how hard and how difficult it is to get some of these approvals and secure funding. Despite what some of your colleagues are saying or believe, the ADC is subject to procurement. And unfortunately, the criminals are not held to the same standard. Upon inspection of this property that you see in this picture, we encountered individuals with firearms. Not only were they armed, they had access to heavy equipment, which made it virtually impossible to stop them. It became so dangerous that even the law enforcement officers did not want to go into the property. It took a joint effort to finally sweep the area and remove these illegal encampments. Unfortunately, it didn't happen soon enough. Tragically, a young woman was murdered by her boyfriend during a domestic dispute on our property. I feel terrible. It should have never happened, especially on my watch. But we have been in contact with the victim's family to this day, just providing whatever support we can to help them through the healing process. Since the sweep, we have beefed up our security. We fortified our gates, our barriers, and our berms. And in this photo here, we have removed at least over 150 cars and counting from the premises. We are in the process of preparing the land now. We're spreading organic compost, and the land should be available in spring of 2021. Next slide. Security is a unfunded mandate, and it's a very expensive one. This photo here is taken in Whitmore Village in Rep Peruso's district on Oahu Circle. The residents there reached out to ADC for help. A lot of these residents were elderly, kupuna, and they were being harassed by thieves and stray dogs. So we worked with HPD community policing team, as well as the residents in the area, and we took action. It's these kinds of unfunded mandates that it takes a lot of time and effort away from the staff. It's also very expensive. And for a staff of 4, it really takes a toll. With that, I'll turn it back over to Jim.
Next slide. Thank you. And this is repairs to the former Del Monte well. We call it a bot well, and it's water for irrigation for our lands and everything. On the bottom, you see security vehicle, and we need security 24/7, and that's part of what Ken alluded to is where we spend a lot of money trying to protect agricultural lands and equipment and things like that. But we need to do this because that's a really critical, very, very critical part of our operation, and we can't afford to let the wells go down. And the upper side is, you can see, if you see out there, this is part of Galbraith, and this is one section of how much agricultural production there is in Galbraith. We have two new reservoirs we just completed, and that should help us even make water more affordable as well as reliable, and to assist with the farmers' irrigation needs. This is okay. So the next steps is ADC to pivot to field of vacant lands, potentially economic impact, putting lands into production. And here you see a picture of Shinho, and this is one of the, I guess, innovative farmers that putting up a screen house, not a greenhouse, but a screen house. Next slide. Next steps for Oahu, we recently made progress on our water properties. ADC is soliciting applications for the next, and as I pointed out, the next remaining 1,200 acres in central in the Waiahole area. And official announcement will be made in the spring or soon to interested farmers as well as the general public. And once the application is submitted to ADC, the board of directors will determine the applicants qualified as part of the selection process. Once the finalists are selected, we will begin negotiating terms for leases, prospective tenants, and announce new assignees later this year. Developing, one of the things that we really want to do and that we need to work on, and it's not been, done before. I mean, it's done before, but not to the extent where we want to develop and implement a crop rotation framework that includes both livestock and crops. And that's part of one of our things that we want to really work on. Develop facilities and infrastructure to accommodate agriculture activities, harvesting, packing, processing, and distribution. I think that's going to be a critical element as we move on, as agriculture moves on with FSMA requirements, food safety, etc. Next steps for Waiahole, incorporate a R1 Waiahole wastewater treatment plant into the agriculture system. And the system would actually provide adequate water to us, reliable water actually to the farmers. But what it does is that it is a project or vision to take the R1 water out of Lake Wilson, so the lake becomes cleaner and more usable. Expand system capacity by acquiring, incorporating 3 more wells, and again, that's to give us, adequate water supplies and like a backup. Develop additional reservoirs, same thing, and implement a crop rotation. We talked about that for livestock. Develop facilities to accommodate agricultural activities. We talked about that also. The Waiahole water system, and here you see some of the progress that's been made. Although this is to enclose the system and to make sure that the system runs reliably, and rehabilitate the existing water system, so we don't have the leaks and things like that. And one of the things that we really want to do is that it's kind of a safety factor, because this ditch also runs to the Mililani residential area, and for safety factor, then we want to enclose this thing for health and safety reasons. Next steps in Kalepa is to convert more of the lands into productive diversified agriculture, and this is ginger, and and select parcels targeted for land prep, including tree clearing, and there's a lot of easier trees there. And again, rotation program that would accommodate all of these crops. So try to make the land a lot more productive, with the same footprint. And this is Kekaha, and again, we want to maybe put 1,000 acres of productive diversified agricultural lands in Kekaha. Here you see a picture of this umi farm, and this is a mango grove. But I think what's unique about this is that this farm is trying to operate or trying to grow mangoes on a trellis, and it's a pretty unique system. And they do this, and I saw this being done in New Zealand, and they were growing apple trees on a trellis and everything. So, but I think that's pretty innovative idea, and I think that's something that we should keep our eye on. And mangoes is a great import replacement, as well as maybe an export to places like Japan. Next slide. Here's, you see one of our projects, and I won't go, I mean, you know, this is a freckle-free project, and what I mean by freckle-free is having, if you look closely, the papaya doesn't have all of these blemishes on, and that's one of the things that and I think the project's almost, if not almost done, but you know, this is another avenue where we can, you know, sell our papayas that aesthetically looks better, maybe tastes better into our market. Hopefully this is just recently, so you know, I think that the farmers can start to look at this, and you know, maybe with DOA we can start marketing our papayas again. Next slide. Challenges. I think COVID, of course, is a challenge to everybody, and lack of funding. I mean, you know, we talk about we want to move agriculture, but not much money is given to agriculture, and that's the reason why partnering is so important. And and the other thing is climate change, and that's the reason why we're doing all of these water projects, reservoirs, redundancy, and wells, etc. And so we're preparing for what lies ahead, you know, in terms of climate change, and for us, it's water. Food safety will become a very, very important factor. Right now, it's kind of it's important, but you know, I don't think we have enough emphasis on food safety at this point. For our farms here, we try to enforce it, and that's one of the challenges that are with the smaller farmers not understanding, and it is costly, you know, because you know you have to have a, you know, like a outhouse or a potty. You can't just do it in the fields anymore. You need to dispose of your you know, tapes and rubbish, and not bury it and burn it and things like that. So there's a, you know, lot to be learned and everything else like that. The other, lastly, I think it's like conflicting ag interests, you know, with our farmers. One, the bigger farmers, we compete with solar farms. We have conflicting sometimes policies. You know, we want small farmers and we want big farmers, and you know, then you hear what comes out, and he says, why can't you move on agriculture and everything else like that? So that's a day, we should spend a day talking about that, but that's some of the challenges that we have. Thank you. And that concludes our presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. So we're going to move on to our question and answer section. The members, does anybody have questions? Okay, Representative Martin.
Hi, I have a question about the process that interested farmers go through in order to get a contract to lease with you folks. And I'm particularly interested in the initiative of hemp farmers. There are some people in my district that are working on that contract, and just to know what the status is. Mahalo.
Okay, let me understand. You had kind of two questions: the process in applying for the land, and you had a question on hemp, right?
Yes, thanks.
Okay, so with the hemp project that we're talking about, I guess you're talking about Friends of Waimanalo?
Yes.
Okay, so for that's something that hasn't been decided. They made a presentation to the board, and as I said earlier, that you know, all of these applications will be vetted by the committee and by the board of ADC. And so you know, what we do is we have a spreadsheet that has, you know, people application. They need to qualify, and it's done by you know, like graded by points as far as how much do you qualify, or how you rank in the selection process. Is that sufficient? Or I can call Ken up and he can walk you through the selection process if you want to.
I'd like to learn as much as I can about it, if that's all right.
Okay. So let me call Ken, because he's done at least two of them. Thank you.
Chairperson Hashim, Vice Chair Russo, members of the committee, Ken Nakamoto again. Thank you, Representative Martin, for the question. So what we do is we set out an announcement. Our board just approved the latest notification to farmers to let the interested applicants know that farmers that we are accepting applications. So anyone can submit an expression of interest. I believe the Friends of Waimanalo did submit an expression of interest, as well as countless others. We were at actually an all-time high for interest of land to the ADC. Once the expression of interest is submitted, we create a mailing list. And when we get approval from our ADC board, we send out the notification to these interested applicants, as well as some of the ag-related nonprofits and government agencies to inform them that we are now accepting applications. Our board did form a selection committee. It's comprised of the ADC board members, as well as people from the ag community. And when the applications come in, this committee will basically rank them. We look at things like financing, marketability, business plan. We look at their experience. We also look at their food safety. That's not really a emphasis, but it's becoming more and more important. And once we select these farmers, when we create the selection, we base it on meritocracy. So the highest scores will be selected. And from that, we start negotiating with these farmers and interested applicants. And we then take that to the board. And if the board so chooses, they can approve or deny these requests. So,
and when does the next round finish? When will you let them know?
We are targeting spring 2021 to send out the next notification.
Okay, that's it. Okay, next.
I'll turn it back over to Jimmy.
Anybody else for questions? Seeing none. Oh, sorry. Vice Chair Peruso. Sorry about that.
Okay. So I shouldn't unmute myself, right? Okay. So aloha, Director Nakatani. I learned a great deal from the testimony submitted in the two hearings that we've had with regard to HB 1271, and most of my learning had to do with Kauai. And so I wanted to ask you some follow-up questions because I feel like my understanding is incomplete. Can you talk a little bit about the nature of the agreement between ADC and the Kekaha Ag Association?
So you're coming in pretty soft, but the question is our relationship with ADC and the KAA, Kauai Agricultural Association?
Correct.
Is that the question?
Yes.
Okay. So the Kekaha Association is a culmination of companies on Kauai. And what they do is that help us manage those properties, like the 12,000 acres there. They help us manage their area, and they're an association that it helps us manage the area, and they also help small farmers and businesses there. I think without them, we would be hard pressed to manage that much acreage and everything. It's not that they do it, we have a person that goes out every quarter and Lyle Road, and he does do inspections in Kekaha as well as Kalepa. So that's quite a ordeal. But it's worked. The arrangement has worked well, and I think we're moving to more and more diversified agriculture over there. And so, I don't know if that answers your question.
It does in part. I guess a follow-up question would be with respect to the ways in which they manage the work that's being done over there. So correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that they manage the infrastructure. So they manage the transportation of water to the farmers. So they aren't, of course, selling the water, but they are collecting fees for the transportation of that water. And I'm wondering what the fee structure is like. So if they're collecting fees from the farmers for water, what kinds of financial arrangements are they making with ADC? So if you can talk a little bit more about the money.
Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Mari Kaiichi. She's been active in, in Kekaha, but we don't sell water. We sell the delivery of water. I think you need to be clear on that. The water's free, and so let me give you Myra. So maybe she can help me answer that question.
Morning, Chair Hashim, Vice Chair Puso, members of the committee, and Kaiichi, and I work for ADC as well. So as Jimmy mentioned, the Kekaha Ag Association is a agricultural co-op organized under Chapter 421, the Wholly Revised Statutes. We have with them what we call the Revised Memorandum of Agreement, and the RMOA. And the RMOA gives to the co-op the responsibility of managing all of the infrastructure. So water was a big one, roads, drainage canals, electricity, transmission pole, generation of electricity through the hydroelectric power plants, and maintenance of the ravines. On the water delivery, so the way the structure of the this relationship between ADC and the KAA works is we have a value assigned to the land that's rented, leased in Kekaha. Of that value, tenants pay ADC a portion, and they pay the KAA as the balance of that value. And because the KAA is a 421 co-op, they have to spend all that money back into their mission, which is to manage the infrastructure. The money paid to the KAA goes directly back into the land. And that's how ADC and the state of Hawaii benefits from this split in rents. ADC's portion goes to help ADC's operating costs, and the balance goes back into the land through the co-op. And we are in constant communication with the KAA staff. I hope that answered the structure.
It does. I'm wondering then, when you have issues that emerge, like these lawsuits around the disposal of pesticides, I'm wondering how that affects the relationship. Who is responsible?
Well,
So the state is financially responsible for those lawsuits, correct?
I don't want to opine legally on anything, but typically the wrongdoer should be responsible for whatever they've done wrong. So if the state has done anything wrong, yes, the state should be responsible. If someone else has done something wrong, they should be responsible. The lawsuit I think that you're referring to is the Federal Clean Water Act lawsuit.
Correct.
And that was really more about discharging waters into the waters of the US. My meter just ran out. My parking meter just ran out.
Sorry. It's okay
No,
that
we'll
you
just
come back.
I'll try and finish it up in 5 minutes and beat the traffic. I think you're referring to the Federal Clean Water Act, and that arose because when we were trying to apply for, we initially had an NPDES permit to discharge waters that are drained from the Kekaha lands to keep it from flooding. But when we applied back in, I think it was 2015 or 13, there was indecision at the EPA level. And so the Department of Health administratively extended our request, our application for an extension of our permit. And that went on for several years until finally we were told that we would not qualify for an NPDES permit because water quality standards had changed under the state water quality laws, and that we were exempt. The word's not exempt, it's excluded under the Clean Water Act because we were discharging stormwater runoffs from agricultural land. And the moment that we gave up that request for a permit, the lawsuit was filed. Within days, I think it was very shortly thereafter. And the issue was really one that should have been tested legally, which is whether an operation like ADC's in Kekaha should be covered by the NPDES permit, or should just be managed by best management practices for stormwater runoff. And the court decided several years later that it should be governed by the NPDES permit. And with that in mind, ADC then filed an application for a further permit. In the meantime, there's this period that we're in flux. We don't have a permit. We know we should have a permit. We're waiting for the Department of Health to issue a permit to us and to learn the terms of that permit. So we have a settlement with the plaintiffs that involves water quality monitoring, best management practices, GIS interactive inventory of the entire Mana Plain that we under our control, and of course reporting. And that's a huge undertaking involving about 3 or 4 different contractors.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And how much of ADC's resources has that used?
It's going to exceed $1 million. A lot of that money is coming from our Navy contract. The Navy NAVFAC Hawaii pays us to continue to pump water through their pumps out of the Mana Plains. And in exchange for that service, we have cash coming in or income coming in from the Navy. That money we then turn around and hire the consultants to actually maintain the pumps, monitor the pumps, report on the amount of water discharged. We have contractors to oversee the drainage of the drainage canals to ensure that they are flowing properly. Of course, under federal contracts, we also have to have a site and safety health officer to ensure that all activities are conducted in accordance with federal law. And we have to have a quality manager, an environmental energy manager as well, all federal requirements. So the Navy monies pay for a lot of these activities under federal standards.
Okay. I have a different but related question. Are there any other people who want to ask questions? So it's related only in the sense that it's also about water. And maybe Dr. Nakatani can respond to this because it is more focused on the Whitmore area and specifically the irrigation project that Limtiako is working on right now. So we've been having community discussions about that, and thank you for sharing that information with the community about the change in plans. And now it looks like we're going to be diverting the water from the wastewater treatment plant and from Lake Wilson to the ADC lands. And given the history of agriculture on the central Oahu plains, there's a reason that pineapple was the main crop that was grown there because it was not water intensive. I am concerned about the farmers who currently benefit from the water from Lake Wilson. So those are folks in Waialua on the North Shore, and I'm wondering if you have given any thought to how that diversion of water from the wastewater treatment plant and Lake Wilson will affect those farmers, and if that's part of the conversation that ADC has. I know that your interests are to look out for ADC lands and to prepare those lands. But I am curious about how that water diversion is going to affect farming as a whole in the area.
Thank you for that question. I think, Representative Peruso, I think that we've done enough. Limtiako is pretty good consulting company, and that we're going through the EA process. I think the EA process will flush out all of those concerns. I think pointed out in that meeting that we had Monday night is that we, Dole, disposes of a lot of water presently. And, so it shouldn't be a problem. We're talking about 1.6 million coming from the wastewater plant. And what it is that we probably dispose, at minimum, and what I mean dispose is letting water out of the lake is about at least 10 million gallons to 10 to 20 million gallons a day. So I'm not sure that this would be affecting them. I think the farmers or the community downstream would be extremely happy that if we can turn the ditch water into usable R1 water or classified as R1 water versus R2 water. And that was part of our goal, is to have that ditch water be more universal. In other words, R1 water has less restrictions. And so that was the whole thing. The other issue was that taking this R1 water from the lake, besides cleaning up the lake, would free up, taking groundwater. And that was one of the other goals, is to not take precious groundwater and use irrigation, surface irrigation water.
So are you saying that the water that will be flowing in the ditch will also be R1 certified?
It could be,
water?
but it could be, but it's not presently considered R1.
Okay.
It's R2 water, but it's in the ditch. So technically, farmers can't use that for leafy greens, or where water would touch the plant, the surface, where they're like greens or something like that. It could be used for trees, but not. But there are some restrictions as to what R1 water can be used for.
Right. Okay. Do you have questions?
Hey, thank you very much. So Jimmy, I need to ask this question. So you recently had a pretty scathing audit. What have you done? What has ADC done to address the issues that were brought up in the audit?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think first of all, the audit is scathing, but everybody needs to look at the recommendations, and that's what we're focusing on. And as far as the recommendations go, we are working on a lot of the recommendations, and it's not that we turn a blind eye on that, but and we can address those things. We just recently had a board meeting, and we talked about that, but we want to make sure that at least a lot of it is. We are working on it. It's like, but again, we need to look at the recommendations rather than the report. I don't think and I don't need to berate the auditor, but I think every audit that came out is pretty scathing, and so, but we take it seriously, and we are looking at the recommendations that are given us from the auditors, and we are at this time working on it. So I think hopefully by the end of the year we'll have a lot more. We can give you a report on what we did and how we're addressing those things.
Can you give a little bit more detail on what you're doing to address those issues?
What am I called back Myra, because she's been working feverishly on some of the things that we are talking about in detail.
Thank you. So yes, at the meeting on Wednesday with the board, we developed a plan. One of our board members developed a matrix of all of the recommendations. And what we're going to do is prioritize them. There were 28, I believe, recommendations for the staff, and 5 recommendations to the board. And what we're going to do is prioritize each recommendation, vet each recommendation to see which ones may be bringing up duplication of efforts between ADC and the DOA, which is a problem that I think both ADC and the department have struggled with for a long time, trying to carve out different aspects. If we are being required to do similar work to the department to make sure that we don't duplicate efforts, and to, as much as possible, try and reduce the 28 tasks into groups so that we can address them more quickly, similar groups. In discussions with the DOA department chair, one of the things we're talking about is whether there's changes, amendments that should be made to the ADC statute 163D to make clear that the tasks, the mandates put upon ADC is not duplicative. of the department and to determine which types of tasks should have more leeway, should have the breadth of power that ADC has for the activity, and which should be more properly governed under administrative rules and DOA statutes. And those are things that we have to, item by item, sit down with the department so that we can come back to the legislature and have at least a starting point for discussion on who should be doing what and to what extent, and which ones are more regulatory in nature, which are more proprietary in nature. Who's the proper agency and who has the type of mandate that can most efficiently accomplish these tasks? Right now, that's our plan. But as Jimmy said, hopefully by the end of the year, by the time we're reporting back to you for next year, we'll have a little more specificity on each of the types of recommendations and our plan to address them. On some of the more operational criticisms that the auditor came out with, we actually had started working on that before the audit report came out, because we could tell from the questions that these were problems. So as far as office management, document flow, filing, your typical office activities, we had actually started working on that before.
Thank you.
I have a quick-
Representative Caruso.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead.
I have a quick follow-up question to that. So the Department of Agriculture in their testimony to both the Agriculture Committee and to Finance said that they thought that there were, as you mentioned, some activities that were more appropriately handled by the Department of Ag. And I think that it generally boiled down to the analysis that ADC might be more efficient or effective in terms of land development and procurement, purchasing the land, and that the Department of Ag might be better equipped to manage the lands and the irrigation projects. And I think that that's the experience that you described with Kekaha, the Agriculture Association, suggests that that might be have some merit, that argument. If that is true, and you are able to affect that kind of change, I am wondering if then we would be able to get more small farmers onto these lands that were meant to transition us into more sustainable, diversified agriculture. And I understand, like I attended the ADC board meeting, and I understand the conversation around small farming versus larger industrial ag. But I think that what I hear from the community and what I hear from a lot of small farmers is a willingness and an energy and an interest in, especially in this period of pandemic, expanding what we do around small farming. So I'm wondering about your thoughts around if we shift the management of the lands to Department of Ag, if that will give us perhaps more capacity to support small farmers, because I think the Department of Ag has had some experience and some success in that area. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, we agree. Actually, these are discussions that we've been having with the Department of Ag for years, since we started on the campaign to acquire property. And your question is actually far more complicated than I think you realize. When we talk about small farmers and the success of small farmers, there are different categories of small farmers as well. One of the problems that we have when we talk to these applicants, these interested parties, is how to buffer, if they're organic farmers, how do we buffer them so that their crops don't get contaminated with conventional farmers? I don't know that the department has a mechanism to accomplish that as well, but these again are the discussions I think that we need to have with them. That's exactly right. Would it maximize? Would we get 100% success on the small farmers? I'm not sure about that, but if anyone knows how to accomplish 100%, that would be great. Again, though, I want to keep everyone in mind that when we are addressing the needs of 100 farmers with 10 acres each. It's the costs go up exponentially compared to when we are addressing one farmer with 1,000 acres. So the more pipes that are going to be required, the more meters are going to be required. Just the cost goes up. And if we have the funding, we can probably do more. If we have less funding, we're going to have to figure out how to spread whatever resources we have to address the small farmer. And it may not just be, ADC doesn't have to do everything. Maybe it's that we have a group of 10 farmers and we say, here's 100 acres, and maybe they can figure out how to allocate the cost. This is the type of partnership arrangement that Jimmy's talking about that we need to explore. And we can't, unlike the department who would then come up with rules and say, okay, you must have 10 farmers with 100 acres, you must figure out how to do this thing. ADC is a little different, we're a little broader, and we don't have those types of restrictions. We can get 10 farmers together and we can say, give us a plan. Can you make this work? If all we can do is give you 5 meters, can you make this work amongst the 10 of you? And maybe they can have a partnership and we can have a relationship with just 5 meters. It's the setup of how ADC is able to develop the land is a little different from the department's capability. And you're right, those are the discussions we need to have with them to see which aspects of these developments are best left with ADC or given to ADC, and which should be handed over to the department because they can do it more efficiently.
One thing I am concerned about, just to follow up, is a tendency I see to try to contain these conversations within state agencies. And my experience, just in the past year, has been that there are a lot of community organizations and there are a lot of, so I think of the Farmers Union, I think of the Farm Bureau, I think of I think of CTAR, and I'm wondering if ADC and the Department of Ag would be open to a broader community discussion about a state plan around agriculture that looks at how we can move forward. Because I don't want this to be, I'm concerned that we tinker on the edges and we don't make any substantive changes and we end up in 10 years saying that was a lost opportunity. And I really feel like there's a lot of energy and there are really interesting and exciting ideas coming from the community, coming from people who are doing small farming and would like a chance to make systemic change. And I guess this is a question for Director Nakatani. If as part of his response to these technical recommendations from the audit, he would be willing to engage in this larger community-based planning, if he's available for that question.
Turn it over to him, but that's spot on. We actually have been talking to a group. I'll let Jimmy tell you all about that.
What are we talking about?
Our think tank.
Okay, so I want to make one thing clear though, we're not, ADC is not against small farmers. We're not restricted to small farmers. I want to point out that any operation, big or small, needs to be economically feasible. And I think that's what we should be focusing on. And small farmers, you get confusing because are we talking about the footprint or are we talking about the operational expenses and the profit and the loss statements and everything like that? I hear you. I think that, this discussion should go on. But at the same time, we're under pressure to move agriculture and we're trying our best to move it. And how that comes out, I think, everybody's input is welcome, but, and that's our task.
So I guess what? Oh, yes. So just one quick clarification. So are you saying then that you would be open to, kind of large scale community conversations and planning, re-examining the role of ADC and the Department of Ag and trying to rethink it? I'm asking if you're open to systemic change is what I'm asking.
Okay, I just want to point out that, and if we need more information, Ken can expand on this, but it's my understanding that my staff, Ken Nakamoto, met with people in the community and talked about, that kind of small operation more subsistence farming type of like that for the community. And the issue was, okay, the land is not an issue, but you need to organize yourselves and you need to give us a proposal. I mean, it's really hard to act to the board without a proposal. And we're not opposed to that. In fact, we want to do that.
Yeah.
But we just don't know what the proposal is. And so is it like, like a community garden that the city and county has, and we also discussed that with the city and county of Honolulu, saying that, hey, how about doing a community garden in Whitmore? And the answer was absolutely not. So
yeah. I remember that conversation, but I just want to, just because time is short, I just want to say that's not really the question I'm asking. The question I'm asking is if ADC, if you as leadership or the director of ADC is open to look at our system as a whole and engagement with the community, everybody at the table together equals talking about a new state approach to agriculture. Because I feel like we are at risk of just reproducing the status quo. And I don't think that the status quo is working. So I very much appreciate your efforts. And I recognize the challenges that you've shared. And we've been having these conversations for years. And I have learned from them. But I am asking if you are open to, as part of your response to the audit, if you are open to this broader systemic change.
Of course, yes, I am open to that. Just one request is that we include the Department of Agriculture and other agriculture interests,
Absolutely.
As well as CTAR, because they can shed a lot of light on this also. So having said that, I think we should, no problem. We can come to the table if we can get at least the department and CTAR as well as us to the table. It's not an issue with us. I would support that.
Okay.
Very good. That's all the time that we have, or 1 minute over, and you got to run to finance.
Yes.
So with that, we will, our info briefing is adjourned. Thank you very much, Jimmy. And thank you, ADC, and to our whole staff. And thank you all the other members.
Okay, thank you.